Everyone. It's good to have you all. We'll run a short and sweet workshop today on UX 101. I know a lot of people are out for the holidays, but I will be also sending this presentation as a follow-up to all of you. So hope this is helpful. And if you have any questions, after this workshop, feel free to drop me a note and I'm happy to chat through. Cool. So let's do this. Right. You all can see my screen. So hi, today we are going to be talking about UX 101. This is a good topic for someone who is new to design in general or who are switching careers from another design field, right? So whether you were in sales before, project management, or whether you are an interior designer, if you have a shared love or interest for UX, this is for you. So this meeting, like I said, is being recorded. I'm going to be sharing this back to you all via Eventbrite, but also on our site at tayloroo.studio. So go check that out. So a little bit about myself. My name is Thu. I am a UX designer by trade. I have been living and working in New York for the last 12 years and solely working in UX design. So what I've been kind of learning and the kind of mistakes that I've made along the way is what I'm hoping to share here, but also some of the exciting things and the opportunities that I see happening in the space. So I have a background in graphic design, actually. Started a while ago, and then went through business school, spent 8 years at ad agencies in New York, advertising agencies in New York. Had a chance to be exposed to a lot of marketing projects and branding projects that involved digital experiences. Then spent 2 years doing product innovation for the like of, BCG and PwC and the consultants of consultants, if you will. And then in the last few years, I've been spending a lot more time working in the startup space, mainly because I do have my own tech startup, but more so because I love the innovation and I love the pace in which startup moves. So yeah, this is why I'm here. And then very recently kickstarted the Taylor Collective, which is probably how you find this workshop. And yeah, have never looked back. So what is the collective? We are a group of independent researchers, designers working on humanity-driven ideas. We work with startups, we work with accelerators, and our goal is to be able to create technologies that do good, right? So in the space of sustainability, arts and craft, game, and diversity, inclusion. And we have a growing team. There are about 25 of us right now. And we are all, independent freelancers choosing to work on projects together. More on that later, because I think it will be really relevant to talk about the kind of opportunities that are in the UX space. Cool. So that's a little bit about me. Again, design background, business background, done pretty much across the board in terms of agencies, consultancy, companies as well as startups. So yeah, hope this is helpful for everyone. What we will be focusing on today is to go through a few things, right? What is UX? What is not UX? Some of the pieces around job market, and we'll leave some time at the end for questions, kind of an AMA fire chat style towards the end. Sounds good? Cool. So what is UX? A lot of people define UX in different ways. And, I think it is something that you kind of have to just find for yourself what it means to you. But it is at its core, there's a few, there's an idea that user experience design, or you would hear UX or UXD, is that process with the sole objective to design a system that offer a great experience to its users. And a lot of people think of UX as a digital only practice. I tend to think of UX, and I work in UX as a multi, I guess, a bridge between physical and digital. There's another term out there called CX, so customer experience. That is bigger than UX by definition, right? CX is customer experience, which again encompass physical and digital experiences. But like I said, UX is becoming much more, more and more like CX, and you'll start hearing some of these terms being thrown out there. There's also XR, experience reality, right? The like of AR, VR, and that is a branch of UX and CX that are venturing, if you will, into the metaverse. Very hot topic these days. So yeah, so I believe that if you're in UX, you shouldn't kind of pigeonhole yourself in just being a digital only designer. You should think in terms of the holistic experience to whomever you're talking to. So UX can encompass many different practices. I would say at its core is about understanding and empathizing with our users, and we call them users. Again, a loose term that describe people who use our product, right? So it can be a product could be an app, a website, an IoT, Internet of Things, right? Virtual assistant. So UX designers would work with Alexas, for example, AR, VR devices, right? Anything that has a device, UX tend to own and touch that. And then, like I said, going a little bit beyond into the physical experience as well. So an example would be if I move through a space, if I go to Zara, basically, right, and I move through the space, how should a designer for a Zara store design the store so that the customer would move through the space seamlessly, hitting all the items that the store want to sell, seeing all the right signs, but not too soon, right? That's why the sales section is always in the back. Being able to interact with any screen, touch screen, but also printed material, collaterals. So the design of that customer moving through the store and interacting with all of the touch points, that's CX. That's another term is service design, right? Like all these terms. And then user experience are often blended into that because the use of digital devices are everywhere these days. And we need to bridge the gap between physical and digital experiences, right? And within UX, I would say there are this couple of different practices, like I said, understanding the user. So the user definition that is often in the user research, the interview, the research, competitive, a lot of the research side, persona, right? Painting a picture of who that person is that we're talking to, or multiple person maybe. User flow, how do they move through the flow itself? And I'll show some of these examples a little bit later on. But in a way, this is the first step of the UX journey very often, because understanding the user is the only tool in our toolbox that matters. Everything else can follow suit. If we understand who we're talking to and what their needs are, the problem that we're trying to solve for them, we can talk to the business people and say, well, yeah, you want to make money, and this might be a way that the business will make more money, but the user wouldn't like that, and therefore we need to consider that, or your customer wouldn't like that, and we need to consider that. And then we can talk to the engineering team and say, okay, yeah, you want to build in and use the latest technology. That's cool from an engineering standpoint and tinkling with innovation, but our user is, not to make assumption, but our users are a bit older, and they would need to have, larger screen size or fonts and simpler tech so that they can navigate and, solve the problem that they have. Again, I know that is a gross assumption that older people have some high barrier to technology, but just as an example. So to that point, users is our best friend, and we need to be advocates for them, right? We need to go into a room full of executive or stakeholders and fight for them. So once we have an understanding of the users, which is all the way on the left side here, we'll think about, okay, so we know who we're speaking to, we know what their problems are, we know what we need to solve for, we know the kind of hypothesis that our assumptions that we want to test. How do we go about testing those, right? A lot of designers or people get really excited in the sense of like, oh, I'm gonna go and create a bunch of wireframes and such, and that's certainly a big part of user testing and usability, right? To create wireframe, to be able to test out the hypothesis, but it's way down the line, right? Before we get there, we need to understand the structure, and this is where I geek out the most. I love this part the most, is the architecture of the application or the product, right? The data map. How do we want the user to understand the content on the page? Where do content live? How do we organize them? It's a very Kondo, Marie Kondo ways to put things in place, which is cool, right? A lot of the clients that we work with have a lot of complex application or complex content. And so to help them navigate and make sense of their content, and then be able to communicate with their customers with the right functionalities, that's what the structure is for. And so once we know, again, who the user are, what problem we're solving, and our assumption, the kind of UX that I would encourage everyone to do is, hypothesis-driven UX or test-driven UX. And what that means is that we're not designing for ourselves as designers, which very often is the case. We're designing for the user, right? And so how do we do that? We do that by understanding, again, their problem up front, and to be able to say, okay, so how, what are the the hypothesis, what are the tests that we can do to learn how best to solve those problems. And this is where, usability and accessibility would comes in, right? So this is where wireframing and user testing and accessibility and making sure that what we are creating is inclusive and accessible to all, right? This is where that step happened. And a lot of, I think a lot of designers, UX designers thrive in this because it's probably the closest to a consumer facing mindset, right? We are all consumers of phone and devices and digital products. And so this is probably the most natural to UX designers. So yeah, when you hear UX designer or prototyper, excuse me, this is probably where it is. When you hear UX architect, this is where that person lives. And then when you hear UX researcher, this is where they live, right? So 3 terms: UX researcher, UX architect, UX designer, which can encompass all, but mostly, a lot of UX designer need to be able to play in this space. And then the last piece is having to do with human computer interactions to understand, the heuristic. If you have a chance, go read more of Nielsen heuristic principles. There's a lot of different types of principles out there, but that's one of the more popular and well-known ones. And it basically states the principles, the heuristic that a product or a digital application needs to be able to keep in mind and to it's almost like a guideline of usability. And so to be able to understand, what are the requirements of a product and how do I hit that is really important. That human computer interaction is also a very good, I guess, theoretical evolving space, obviously, because of the development of AI and what it means to be human, right? Machines have a lot of capabilities this day that can replace a lot of humans' abilities. And so in comparing human to computers, we need to understand what is it that computers can do to aid humans, and what is it that human can access them or ask for the machine help to speed up or gain efficiency of the process. I have always believed that this is a co-mutual benefit relationship, as it should be. But I also believe that, we have an obligation, a responsibility to invest in what it is that make us human. And that is the thesis around the reason around Taylor is to spend the kind of creativity and technology and to be able to share this kind of knowledge as we are doing right now to enable more humanity-driven technology, right? Technology that do good and that preserve and advance the best of what it is that make us human. Okay, so enough of that still. So yeah, these are the, in my opinion, the 4 practices that makes up UX. But as you probably have seen out there, the field is changing really fast, and there are new terms thrown out. Seems like every month there's a new job description out there that is slightly different. So we will talk about, the extension of those practices or what is UX in a little bit. And before we got there, I want to spend some time just sharing the some of the example around UX and UX deliverables so that you can get a little bit more sense of what it is and what to look for. So I'm going to exit full screen so that I can show you some of my screen instead. So user research, right? Again, the point of user research is to be able to say, you know, what is it that our user need? What is their problem that we can solve or should solve for? And what are the hypotheses that would help us guide us along this journey? So this is an example of a user research protocol, as we call it. Is, you know, something that we do at the very beginning of this process. Let's go back. This process here, right? And it allows us to, again, understanding the user requirements. I'll move this. So an example here of the protocol is to say, and this is typically a job of a UX researcher, right? What are the goals? What are the hypotheses? What are we looking to learn? In this case, this is a testing protocol, but you know, the protocol is quite similar for the beginning as well. And then we go into the script of what is it that we're actually going to talk about, and you know, typically we would schedule interviews with the users to learn more about their needs, and we need to be able to have a script on hand to know exactly what to say. The reason why that's important is because we want the data that comes back to have some consistency, right? So if I talk to 3 or 4 people and I use different scripts and I ask different questions, what I got back might not have the same integrity across the board. It might be, you know, the way that I phrase certain question might lead to certain answer, right? So having the same script allow us to avoid that, so that we can have some consistency in results, in data that we get back. Okay, that's an example of a user research protocol. Yeah, this is an example of a user flow or the architecture side. So very often you will hear this term, sitemap or data map, and you also would use this term user flow. This deliverable is actually maybe a combination of all of those. You have the user flow of how the user will move through the product, right? In this case, it's an app. You have the sitemap or the app map that note how do content or functionality nest within each other, right? So what is home? What does home lead to, etc. And then you have the data architecture structure, which note out the kind of data, the kind of information that we're capturing, the kind of analytics that we want to track per screen and throughout. The reason why that's important is because we need to be able to set up a structure up front and to be able to put system in place to allow us to optimize the experience later, right? So imagine if you build something like this and you have no tracking system, and you know, maybe it's an e-commerce site, a shopping site, and suddenly your client is saying, well, nobody is buying anything from me. Can you find out why, right? Suddenly you and the client are in the position of, oh, we don't have any tracking to help us learn of that information, and therefore we don't know how to improve. So having tracking and data plan in place is crucial in helping to improve the experience. So we're taking a long-term view here. Okay, so if you understand a bit more about the user, you understand a little bit more about the structure. A lot of clients come to the collective, to us, asking to audit what they already have. So, right, so not every product start from scratch, right? Some products are already out there, but are not performing at the level that they should be, right? So this is an example of an audit that we did for a platform. And here you can see again the flow, right, as you can see here. And then you can also see some of the notes, some of the audits around this. And heuristic, remember when we were talking about heuristic here, is very helpful in auditing, because heuristics at its core are principles, guidelines of what makes a good digital experience, right? Or a good product, or a physical to digital experience. And because we have that guideline, we can very comfortably and confidently point out where to improve, where the experience of the platform are not hitting the mark. And so heuristic is very helpful for auditing. What do we do from the moment of auditing? Well, very often we would go into more taking what we learn from also user testing, and to be able to revise and iterate, right? If you go out there, it's great if you can start in a product team from scratch, but very often you'll have to more often the opportunity is for you to work with a team that already exists, that you can definitely evolve with. And so being able to work with the product team or the existing product is key. So this is an example of a wireframe, right? Remember when I was talking about designer getting really excited about the space? This is often UX designers play within this role. And you might ask, too, you talk about UX designers as if they're like only doing this. They're not, but a lot of UX designers who don't know how to research would probably only play in this space. Versus if you have more research skill, or you focus solely on research, suddenly your toolbox widen, right? And you can do more things. User testing as well, right? So once we have the product itself, again, going back to the idea of testing and seeing if it's accessible, if it's usable, we would then use this prototype, right? This wireframe that we make, we would go out and create another version of the testing protocol, right? Again, a guide of how we're testing. And we'll be able to say, okay, with this protocol and with this guide, let's see how the user reacts, right? And a lot of the UX designers and practitioners need to stay very organized, because the amount of information that comes back can be overwhelming. So this is an example of how we're organizing using Airtable in the space where we have a big product and we need to do a lot of user testing and keeping track of not only what they are, but if they've been addressed and at which date. Okay, so far we've seen some example of user research, architecture, auditing, wireframing, testing, right? I promise I'm going to talk a little bit more about the practice beyond UX, or what is evolving into. So there are a few other keywords that you will hear. There are UI, right? User interface design. Those are the pixel perfect color designer. They also are very good at thinking about system and design library and language. When I say language, I mean design language, right? How do buttons work together? How do different font system work together? And then you have product design, which in a sense is UX, UI, and knowing either more product planning and or coding, right? So this role is becoming very popular because it's a little bit of everything. You then have UX writer, who are writer, but writing for experience and digital products. They write not in terms of, I'm writing a novel. They write with a purpose. They write with a goal. They write, for example, for an e-commerce site, they would write with the sole purpose of converting people to buy a certain product. And then UX engineer is, again, a combination of UX designers who know how to code. And so this is a role that is very often seen in innovation firm, prototyping, incubating new product. So it's pretty cool. So yeah, these are the couple of other fields that are UX adjacent, and a lot of these would require UX skills as well, but they also require additional skills in order to fit in each of these buckets. Whew. So what is not UX is to make a pretty website. That is something that I've heard clients say over and over again of, I just wanted to make this look really good. UI more so than UX, so user interface design, is more charged with making a product or an experience more visually pleasing. They are more than that, but the UX designers really sole functionality or role in a team is to advocate for the user. It's more function than visual approach, right? It's more usability than aesthetic. So for a UX designer, it will be making a usable, user-friendly website instead of a pretty website. A product that doesn't work is not a product at all, in my opinion. So great. So now that you have some understanding of what is UX and what it is not, I love to think a little bit about the different opportunities out there for UX designers and researchers, right? So typically there are three types of opportunities. You have the full-time gigs at companies and brands. You have the agency gigs, and then you have the independent freelance gig. I'll talk about the pros and cons of each of these, in my opinion, because I've done all of them. But do your own research, obviously. And of course, as life happens, you do what you have to do, right? You do what's needed to help you make, meaningful work for yourself and make an impact for your family, right? So full-time is someone who would be working at, Barclays in their UX team. Full-time is very stable. It allows for a lot of team building. It allows for, a safe environment to grow. And it can be a good first choice for, either someone who's out of school, just out of school, getting more experience, or, someone with, who likes the these stable environments and who likes the kind of opportunities and the coverage that it brings, right? So that in itself, I've seen actually more and more people living full-time positions to do these other two options. And I think mainly because as designers and researchers, I think a lot of the people that I talk to are bored, easily bored, and they crave new challenges, new problem to solve. And I think, not everybody can persist growing with a product over a long time, which has its own merit and its own reward for sure, right? To be able to see a product from start to finish over a long period of time and to grow with it. That's awesome. That's amazing, right? There are not a lot of jobs out there allows you to do that. But yeah, I see a lot of people jumping from maybe different full-time jobs as well. And then of course to agencies and freelancing, specifically because they crave diversity and problem solving. Agency is a very good option. So when I say agency, I mean innovation product shop, ad agency. It allows you to get exposure to many different clients, build your portfolio really quickly, work in team, and to have a lot of exposure. Agency usually require a little bit more experience and need a little bit more navigating in terms of interpersonal relationship standpoint. And then the third option here has to do with freelancing and the gig economy, if you will. If you heard around, there's Upwork, there's Fiverr, there's all of this different movement to go freelance. There's a lot of services out there catering to freelancers right now. As a matter of fact, our collective is a freelancer network, right? And this option allows for, again, exposure to a lot of clients and team in the sense that agency did. Maybe a little less on the team side, maybe more independent. An added level to that is flexibility, right? A lot of people go freelance so that they can work anywhere they want, anytime they want. Of course, the risk there is instability, right? You always have to be pitching, you always have to be finding clients. But some would say that is a plus, right? Because in finding your own client, you can choose the kind of client you want to work with. So for us, for the Taylor Collective, we try to find the kind of client that are making an impact on the world, right? Again, humanity-driven projects. So we only work with them. That is a privileged position to take, right? And it doesn't always work out, right? Sometimes we don't have any kind, but it's the bet that we're willing to make to do meaningful work, which is important to us, right? So freelancer here, it's important to say that because it's often an independent gig, it's important to find the kind of community, the kind of team, that virtual team that you can align yourself with so that you can get the support that you need. It's also very important to learn the basics of how to run a freelancer business. And we have another workshop on that. So go find that and check that out. But overall, is I believe how the world's moving is moving towards. And I believe that being able to go freelance and do meaningful work is going to be increasingly important for our generation. Yeah, so I hope this presentation has been helpful. Again, it's a very quick, short and sweet overview of UX 101, what it is not, and some of the opportunities that present themselves in the UX space. I would love to take any questions, and we'll pause the recording here, but please feel free to come join us on LinkedIn or reach out to me specifically if you ever need help. I'm always here to connect, and I would love to talk with you. Okay, thank you for your time.